On paper, it is a simple calendar update. 2 races have been removed from the 2026 season. But when those 2 races carry a combined hosting fee of at least $100 million, they do not disappear quietly. Bahrain and Saudi Arabia were not just events, they were among Formula One's most commercially valuable weekends. Now the pressure to recover that money collides with a finale already at its limit. Las Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, 3 consecutive race weekends. The financially logical solution may become the sporting nightmare, because in a compressed title fight, the fastest team does not always win. Formula One's business model is built on hosting fees, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the Gulf. Bahrain and Saudi Arabia each command around $50 million per season, paid in 2 installments, a 30% booking fee, then the remaining 70% only after the race is actually run. With both April events cancelled, the sport is left with a minimum $100 million shortfall. That is not just a headline figure. The loss lands squarely on the commercial balance sheet, stripping out the single largest source of cash flow after broadcast rights. The impact is immediate. The $30 million already paid up front by the promoters is locked in, but the $70 million that would have arrived after the checkered flag is gone. That missing revenue is not theoretical, it is the money that funds team payments, covers operational costs, and underpins the entire Concord Agreement revenue share. For some teams, especially those at the lower end of the grid, the difference between a full hosting fee pool and a shortfall can mean the margin between survival and a forced budget squeeze. The financial shock does not end there. Formula One's contracts with broadcasters include a 5% rebate clause if the number of races drops below the minimum guarantee, 22 in this case. With the Gulf rounds gone, the sport could be forced to pay back up to $56 million to its television partners. That money would otherwise have flowed through to the teams or covered the cost of the season's escalating logistics. The danger is that every dollar lost at the commercial level ripples through the entire system, amplifying stress at the very moment teams are bracing for the most technically demanding regulation change in a decade. Insurance policies offer little comfort. The promoters' event cancellation coverage only triggers for their own upfront costs, not for Formula One's lost revenue. The sport is left to absorb the shortfall or attempt to claw it back through last-minute sponsorship deals and regional partnerships, routes that rarely fill a gap of this size. With the combined loss approaching 3% of the sport's total annual revenue, the pressure to find a replacement or to squeeze another race into the calendar becomes more than a commercial question. It becomes a test of how much strain the system can take before the pursuit of profit starts to undermine the sport's competitive reality. The official 2026 calendar draws a sharp line under Formula One's ambition. 3 races, Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi, are locked in on consecutive weekends, November 19th, November 27th, and December 4th. On paper, it's a showcase, a night race under neon lights, a desert sprint, and a twilight finale at Yas Marina. But behind the glamour, the schedule is a warning. There are only 2 idle weekends left in the final month, from November 22nd to November the 24th, and from November 30th to December 2nd. Every other gap has been squeezed out by commercial contracts and broadcast windows. There is no room for error. The Las Vegas round, set for the 3rd weekend of November, leaves teams with just days to pack up and fly nearly 8,000 miles to Qatar. 7 days later, the circus moves again, this time to Abu Dhabi, with another full-scale transfer of cars, equipment, and people. Each of these events demands its own customs clearances, visa runs, and local infrastructure, all under the pressure of a season's worth of accumulated stress. If Formula One tries to recover a lost Gulf round, the options are limited to those 2 spare weekends. There is no flexibility left in the early season, with pre-season testing occupying the only other open slot. Pushing the calendar past December 6th would require a full renegotiation with broadcasters and venue operators, a move for which there is no public precedent and little appetite among rights holders. The published schedule already forces a relentless pace. Teams must complete 3 flyaway events across 3 countries in just 17 days. The smallest delay, a customs snag, a freight hold, a late visa, could cascade into a missed practice session or compromised race preparation. There is no buffer for recovery, no margin for a technical fix or a crew rest day. From a distance, the calendar looks like a triumph of planning. But every idle weekend is already spoken for. Every shift in the chain is tightly constrained. The danger is that the push to recover lost revenue by reintroducing a race could stretch the system to its breaking point. Formula One's finale was already hard. The Middle East problem could make it brutal. Every Grand Prix is a rolling convoy of machines, parts, and people. Each team's freight manifest reads like the inventory for a small factory. 2 complete cars, plus a 3rd spare chassis, are packed and sealed for every fly away. Alongside them, a set of power unit spares, engine blocks, turbochargers, MGUK and MGUH modules are loaded into reinforced crates. The gearbox allocation includes at least 2 full assemblies per car, each one critical if a component fails mid-stretch. Then come the brake and cooling packs, 4 sets per team, boxed with precision because a single cracked disc or clogged duct can end a weekend. Tires dominate the cargo list. The FIA mandates 13 sets per driver for each event, 4 slicks, 3 intermediates, 6 wets, adding up to over 100 sets per team across the final races. Pirelli's allocation alone fills several containers, each set barcoded and tracked from factory to circuit. Fuel and lubricants, classified as hazardous goods, travel in sealed drums, with every litre logged for customs and compliance. Beyond the cars, the operation expands. Hospitality modules, 2-story paddock suites, kitchens and media centres are shipped in ISO containers, each weighing up to 30 tons. Broadcast units, with satellite uplinks and editing bays, require their own dedicated trucks and power supplies. Tool chests, pit gantries and mobile garages round out the technical kit. Even the staff, around 150 people per team, move in carefully timed waves, their flights and hotel blocks synchronized with the arrival of the equipment. All of it is crated, palletized and documented down to the last wheel nut. The sheer scale is invisible on television, but in the cargo bays and customs halls, Formula One's bulk becomes real. When every item is essential and every crate has a destination, the margin for error shrinks to nothing. Every flight in Formula One's endgame is mapped down to the minute. Once the checkered flag drops in Las Vegas, a convoy of Boeing 777 freighters stands ready, each one loaded with up to 30 tons of cars, spares, and equipment. The journey to Doha is a 20-hour haul, crossing 11 time zones and leaving almost no margin for error. The moment the wheels touch down at Hamad International, the clock starts on a 48-hour customs clearance, standard for Gulf airports, but unforgiving if a single document is missing or a hazardous goods crate gets flagged for inspection. Slot bookings for these charter flights are made months in advance, often before the season even begins. Airport slots are scarce, especially during the high-traffic winter period when cargo carriers compete for every available window. If a Grand Prix is squeezed into one of the 2 remaining weekends, there is no guarantee the same flight paths or customs windows can be secured at short notice. A logistics manager from a leading team described it as threading a needle in a hurricane, saying if our slot slips by even 2 hours, the whole chain can unravel. Once customs clears the freight, teams have less than a day to move everything from the cargo bay to the paddock, reassemble cars, and set up hospitality modules. There is no contingency built into the schedule. A single hold at the border or an unexpected inspection can push a team into a scramble just to make first practice. The choreography is precise because it has to be. There are no spare days, no backup plans, and no room to recover from a missed connection. In this system, even a minor delay can echo through the finale, turning a championship fight into a race against the clock. A single customs hold can unravel months of preparation. In 2024, a 48-hour delay in Shanghai left teams scrambling with outdated front wings, the missing shipment held up by a paperwork error. One team lost a podium, not to a rival's speed, but to bureaucracy and the clock. That scenario, once rare, now hovers over every freight transfer in the 2026 finale. The risk multiplies when the schedule is this compressed and the technology is this new. The 2026 regulations bring a 4-litre turbo hybrid power unit, delivering more electrical deployment than any Formula One car before. Active aerodynamic systems, controlled by fresh software, promise efficiency but add complexity. The chassis is narrower, tightening the space for radiators and cooling ducts. Every system is running closer to its limit, and every component is less forgiving under stress. Heat in Qatar and Abu Dhabi can push battery packs and MGUK units to the edge. A late freight arrival does not just mean a missed practice. It can force teams to run older, less reliable spares. In the new era, a single overheated battery or sand clogging a cooling duct could trigger a DNF, especially with only 2 MGUK units and 3 internal combustion units allowed per season. There is little room to swap out a failing part without grid penalties. Reliability engineers warn that the compressed finale is a perfect storm: high ambient temperatures, new hardware, and minimal recovery time. The calendar's apparent order hides a reality where a missed customs slot or a faulty sensor, something as small as a cracked cooling pipe, could decide the title. In 2026, the system's fragility is not theoretical. It is a race against time, paperwork, and the limits of new technology, with the championship hanging in the balance. Mistakes in Formula One rarely come down to a single moment. They build, layer by layer, as fatigue chips away at precision. In the closing weeks of a season packed tight with fly-away races, the human cost becomes measurable. Pit crews, who train all year for sub-2-second stops, begin to show signs of strain when the gap between races drops below 8 days. Internal data from the 2022 and 2023 seasons revealed a 12% spike in pit stop errors under these conditions. That is not just a slow tire change, it is cross-threaded wheel nuts, dropped jacks, or a fuel rig misfire, each one shaving critical seconds or inviting a penalty. A former crew chief, now retired after a decade on the front lines, put it simply, you can't shortcut sleep and expect the same hands to deliver. By the third race in a row, the smallest distraction becomes a dropped wheel gun. The numbers back him up. Over a compressed triple header, minor teams saw their average pit stop times climb from 2.5 seconds to 3.1 seconds, while error rates for wheel changes nearly tripled. Even among top outfits, the margin for error narrowed to a hair's breadth. When the schedule leaves no room for recovery, mistakes multiply, not just in the pit lane, but in race strategy, data analysis, and split-second decisions on track. Cognitive fatigue does not just slow hands, it clouds judgment. Engineers working 20-hour days are more likely to misread a sensor spike or miss a developing problem. A miscalculated tire call or a fumbled radio message can swing a race, or a championship, with no time to fix what went wrong. In a finale this compressed, human limits become the invisible boundary between triumph and disaster. When a calendar crisis hits Formula One, the pain is never distributed equally. The cost of squeezing an extra race into the closing weeks lands hardest on the teams with the smallest buffers. While the top 3 outfits can lean on dedicated logistics arms and deep spare part inventories, midfield and backmarker teams face a very different equation. For a midfield operations head, the numbers are stark. Adding a single Gulf round to the end of the season means at least $12 million in incremental costs, air freight, extra hotel blocks, visa fees, and the sudden need for rapidly built hospitality modules. That figure alone can represent 5% of a small team's annual budget, the difference between finishing the season with a technical upgrade or running the same chassis for the final 4 races. The freight bill is only the beginning. Each additional race consumes a set of power unit components, an extra internal combustion engine, another MGUK, and more gearbox assemblies. Under the 2026 rules, allocations are tight: 3 internal combustion units and 2 MGU units per season. Exceeding those limits means grid penalties, and for smaller teams, every penalty is a lost shot at points, prize money, and sponsor exposure. Staffing squeezes tighten as well. A 4th flyaway in the finale adds 30% more travel days, but small teams cannot simply rotate in fresh crew. The same mechanics, engineers, and logistics staff are pushed to their limits, with no margin for illness or error. In this environment, a single customs delay or a missed rest window can spiral into a race weekend lost before a wheel turns. For the teams already on the edge, the financially logical solution, recovering a lost race, may be the sporting nightmare. The risk is not just a heavier workload, but a competitive imbalance that grows with every extra dollar spent and every hour of sleep lost. Formula One stands at a crossroads, facing 3 paths with no easy answer. The first option is to accept the $100 million loss. That means swallowing not only the vanished hosting fees, but also a 5% rebate to TV partners, a hit that may reach $56 million. For teams, especially those running close to the edge, the fallout lands as reduced prize money, tighter budgets, and the risk of staff or development cuts. Commercial analysts note that while insurance covers some promoter costs, Formula One itself is left exposed, forced to recalibrate its spending and revenue forecasts for the season. The second route is brute force. Force a Gulf race back into the calendar. On paper, this recovers a large portion of the lost revenue and keeps the broadcast guarantees intact. But the cost is measured in more than dollars. Logistics managers warn that compressing 4 flyaway races into the final stretch pushes the system to breaking point. The freight chain tightens, crew fatigue deepens, and the risk of grid penalties for component overuse grows. Smaller teams face the highest hurdle, as incremental costs for freight, spares, and staffing can consume 5% of their yearly budget. The financially logical solution may be the sporting nightmare, with reliability failures or human error deciding the title, not just outright speed. A third option is to mitigate, recover part of the loss through regional sponsorships, performance-tied bonuses, or a rebate structure that softens the blow to teams. This path avoids operational overload, but leaves a revenue gap that cannot be fully closed. Analysts suggest that a package of targeted Gulf partnerships and a strategic rebate to smaller teams could save $30 to $40 million, but it still requires careful negotiation and leaves the calendar 1 race short. Each scenario carries its own trade-offs, and none offers a clean escape from the system's fragility when commercial ambition collides with real-world limits. Formula One's calendar still looks unbreakable, until reality applies pressure. If the sport tries to recover $100 million by forcing races back into the finale, the danger is clear. The championship may be decided not by speed, but by exhaustion or failure. In 2026, the system's limits are not just commercial, they are human. The next title may go to the team that simply survives. Let me know your take in the comments. Because in Formula One, the real race isn't always on track. Subscribe if you want to understand what actually decides it.